How do you manage stress and triggers on the daily? How do you maintain motivation? How do you move forward after facing traumatic experiences? How do you still see value and motivation when facing unemployment? Now, more than ever, we must destigmatize talking about mental health and create uncomprehensive strategies to care for our emotional well-being. Our moderators, Roni Aidibi and Yumna Haddad, the floor is yours.
اوكي
هاي
بعد كنتوا سامعيني او بحاجه احكي بالمايك؟ اوكي انا اسمي يمنى.
in the back sometimes they do.
Facebook Live. Okay.
Like Christine just introduced us, I would like to welcome you all to our panel discussion about mental health. I will introduce Rawia, the moderator. A brief overview about Rawia. She's a relationship meta coach with over 5 years of experience in coaching and psychological support. She is a certified meta coach from NCF and Neuro Linguistic and specializes in the relation with our body and self-image. More about Rawia, she's a volunteer at Flow Psychological First Aid, is certified NLP Master Practitioner from Neuro Linguistic Foundation. She also leads JCI Beirut Mental Health Project, Mind Your Mind.
Thank you, Yumna. And my turn, I will introduce Yumna. Yumna, she's a clinical psychologist in training at the start. She was a lifeline operator at Embrace and graduate assistant at Lebanon University, and was 10 years of humanitarian work with UNICEF and UNHCR, Lebanon and Sudan. As for her academic experience, she has a MA and BA in clinical psychology at Lebanon University and BA in international relations at Yes, she. Okay. Welcome everyone. It's your turn now to introduce our panelists.
Okay, we're going to go by alphabetical order. Yes. I'll be introducing Angela. Angela Dabul is sitting in the middle. She's a clinical psychologist and a CBT therapist. She graduated with a master's in cognitive behavioral therapy. Angela started practicing psychology in 2018, just before the world faced one of its greatest pandemics and Lebanon one of its largest socioeconomic crises. Since then, she has been providing psychotherapy to survivors of violence and trauma and counseling to university students. She is also a clinical supervisor to intern in psychology. She's actually my supervisor. Her psychodynamic background, combined with her master's in CBT and her multiple trainings with Johns Hopkins, McGill University, Netherlands, this is difficult to pronounce, and Lebanon National's mental health program, allow her to tailor each session to the needs of her clients. In a world where stress, trauma have become mundane, she is passionate about helping others build confidence to change what they can and manage what they can't. And if you're wondering how she's coping with it all, you can find her hiking or dancing some something. Thank you, Angela, for joining us. I'll also be introducing Fatima Tirani. Thanks for coming, Fatima. Fatima is a psychiatric and mental health clinical nurse specialist. She's a graduate in Masters of Science in Nursing from UB. Her experience in teaching psychiatry to undergrad nursing students, training in paramedical, professional on psychotropic medication, and following up on pharmacotherapy, process trained in acceptance and commitment therapy, and currently working in mental health emergencies, especially suicide. Thanks, Fatima.
I will introduce Mr. Roni and Marwa. It was my pleasure. Marwa Aidibi, she's a professional life and mind coach. She earned her bachelor degree in Nutrition and Dietetics from American University of Beirut and her master's degree in business and organizational psychology from the University of Liverpool. Believing in mind's power, Marwa was able to train and coach people to program their minds to best of their health and skills. Through the years, she managed different workshops in career and personal development, as well as being coach for different organizations like Nestle, Holden Group, Red Cross, Lebanon Medical Association. Marwa was the first to introduce the mind dieting concept, a unique way to take care of your health and weight. Her profession spread beyond training ambition individuals on EQ, leadership, communication skills, and mind dieting, NLP, body language, to being an instructor in different universities. Welcome, welcome. Mr. Roni is a practitioner and trainer of several alternative therapeutic modalities that include metaphors of movement, integral eye movement techniques, mental space psychology, provocative change works, Neuro Linguistic Programming, and others. Since 2013, he has worked with individuals and groups on the topic of stress and emotional management, fears, phobias, and anxiety, in addition to a variety of business and self-development topics. On the JCI side, Roni served as the 2016 National President of JCI Lebanon. Among different positions we served on through the years. Also, welcome, Roni.
If you can agree on a couple of things, if you can keep your phone on silent so we can have a fruitful discussion. And also, if you can keep your questions till the end, we'll have 15 minutes with the audience. So whenever any question that pops up, keep it in mind or write it down, and we're going to answer it all. Thank you. Panelists, the floor is yours. Can you at first give some definitions about mental health, trauma, coping mechanisms, anxiety, just to, so everybody is on the same page? Who would like to start?
I think psychologist are the best to start.
Okay. It's kind of difficult to give very brief definitions, and I can talk about mental health for hours. But very briefly, just like we can take care of our physical health through exercise, food, and just go to the doctor, have checkups, whatever. We also have to take care of our mental health. Mental health is everything that has to do with our mind, our emotions, our behaviors, our thoughts. In general, usually we think of disorders when we talk about mental health. So depression, anxiety, PTSD, eating disorders, personality disorders. But mental health and well-being is also about mental wellness. So not only getting out of a disorder or managing the disorder, but also even in the absence of disorders, what are some things I can do in order to have a balanced mental health, or to have good mental health. Just as we take care of our bodies, we can take care of our health outside of disorders and towards, let's say, growth.
Does anyone want to take it from there? Anyone would like to add?
Does any of the panelists like to add anything to the definition of mental health? Okay. I think we all have an idea what anxiety and stress are. We're living it. Let's talk about stress first. I think this is the main topic. So stress is usually when there's an imbalance between an external requirement, so something in the environment, and my internal capacities. So there's something happening on the outside that I cannot cope with, that I find too difficult to deal with. So there's going to be a lack of balance. This lack of balance can have effects on many levels. It can have an effect on the psychological levels, on the thoughts I'm going to have. It can have an effect on my emotions. I can feel anxious, I can feel sad, I can feel frustrated, afraid, disappointed, shameful. It can also have an effect on our body. And that's, I think, a very important effect, because that is the thing we notice first. So I will feel tired, I might feel my heart is beating really fast, I might feel like I'm having more shivers than usual, sleep will be affected, appetite will be affected. And each person will react to stress differently. So we cannot compare how one person reacts to one stressor to how another person reacts. So let's say a common stressor, we all lived through COVID. So each person dealt with it differently according to their own capacities. And these capacities come from different places. So they come from our genetic background, so what we inherited, as well as our environment, as well as other factors like if you have social support, if you have enough skills to cope with difficulties we're facing. That's a general definition. Does anyone want to?
I would like to add something on stress. There's a big difference between stress and depression. So, because most of the people come to us are depressed. In Arabic, it's not mudabris.
It's a very small word.
Yes. So it's a big word. Not every stress is depression. So I just wanted to emphasize on this and make sure that we trace stress at a certain stage. It doesn't mean we are under depression. Psychologists talk better than me. I'm a coach, but to say that I'm under depression, there is a diagnosis process. There is questionnaires. There is a diagnosis from the psychologist. So please, not every stress you are under, just take it that I have depression. You're not depressed. Okay, so I just wanted to add up this. If you agree.
Thank you, Marwa, and thank you, Angela, for the comprehensive definitions. And as you were saying, Marwa, it's important not to self-diagnose, basically, if you want to put it in a nutshell. And we see it a lot. We see it in people who do a Google search. There's a DSM-5 criteria that they look up, and I need all of these, so I have this.
What is the DSM-5?
So DSM-5 is basically an annual to help the professionals to make a diagnosis, but we can't read the DSM-5 and consider ourselves equitable to diagnose. I also wanted to make one distinction with regards to anxiety before I delve into trauma, which is anxiety is an emotion. And it's a very normal emotion. So feeling anxious is an emotion like feeling happy, like feeling sad, like feeling angry, like feeling guilty. And even the physical sensations that come of it can be like any other feeling that can happen. So when I speak about mental well-being, that doesn't mean that I need to get to an end point where I don't feel anxious, because emotions are important. And all emotions are important. So it also doesn't mean that I need to get to an end point where I am happy. This is what the media tells us, you have to be happy all the time. That's just not real. Life is filled with pain. And when I'm speaking about these emotions send me messages. So anger sends me that something is not right, I need to do something about the situation. Anxiety sends me the message of there is something that is making me feel scared, or there's something that's making me feel anxious. So when I'm speaking about anxiety, it doesn't necessarily have to be an anxiety disorder. And here we also make the distinction. So that's very briefly. Roni, would you like to add anything before I go into trauma? Are you sure? Of course.
Thank you, Fatima, for the very important distinction that indeed we do need stress and we do need anxiety just as we need all of the other emotions. There's also one point that got me thinking from what you said, that stress can be acute, so it's happening in one given moment. For example, I have an interview tomorrow, I have an exam tomorrow, and I'm stressed about that. And then it's resolved and I can continue. And that stress is what's going to push me to study, to prepare. So that stress and the feeling of anxiety that can accompany it are very important, just as Fatima was saying. On the other hand, there is a stress that becomes chronic, which is kind of what we're going to get into as well. And it's also different from trauma, which is what Fatima is going to talk about. And the chronic stress is really the stress that is then difficult to manage and that can lead us to develop some disorders, like depression or like anxiety disorders, or even post-traumatic stress. So now I leave the floor back to you.
So yeah, reaching trauma, I think, one of the first things is that when a person says trauma, a lot of people's minds go towards rape or sexual assault or having someone being injured or killed. Though these are extremely traumatic events, but trauma doesn't necessarily have to do with only these couple. So when we speak about trauma in a general definition, we're talking about any event whereby it is not within what's the status quo of normal and whereby the individual's coping mechanisms have been challenged. يعني أي حدث بحيث إنه الشخص أول شيء هذا الحدث غير متوقع، هذا الحدث غريب على الشخص والشخص قدرته على التحمل بهذا الحدث تم تخطيها، هذا الحدث ممكن يعد traumatic experience. So it can be anything on the physical level, physical abuse, physical violence, even sometimes verbal experiences such as bullying can be a traumatic experience. Again, anything within sexual assaults or harassment, in addition to natural disasters that can also affect a person. And interestingly as well, and we'll later delve into when we talk about PTSD, there's also trauma can be something that a person witnessed rather than they themselves experienced. So let's say if I want to take something very familiar to everyone, Beirut blast. So not only the individuals who got physically harmed in the Beirut blast was a traumatic experience for them, even individuals who have witnessed it afterwards, who have witnessed الدمار اللي صار, who have witnessed people who are injured, who have witnessed the pain that have happened, this as well can be a part of the traumatic experience.
And the people who supported the victims, are you talking about vicarious trauma?
So this is another topic as well. Vicarious trauma is a concept. كمان individuals who are first responders, individuals who are in Red Cross, doctors, nurses, they might also experience something we call as vicarious trauma, which is secondary trauma by which the person is witnessing on a continuous basis a lot of people's pain. Yeah, a lot of people's pain and trying to be supported in this. They might also experience what we call secondary trauma, but maybe we'll delve into that later. وهون مثل ما قلنا إنه not every anxiety is an anxiety disorder. It's also very important to distinguish. مش كل شخص حيطلع بتروما معناتها حيكون معه PTSD. And even if we look at the statistics, only 1/3 of individuals who experience rape develop PTSD. And rape is one of the most horrendous things a person can go through. So 1/3 of these individuals experience PTSD, the other 2/3, it doesn't mean it wasn't a traumatic experience for them. It doesn't mean that maybe their perception of oneself, the world, was not altered. It doesn't mean that these individuals will not need help and support, as they don't meet the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder. And here we go back to the importance of really leaving the diagnosis to a mental health professional.
I would like to add up something. I did an experiment after 4th of August on NGOs managers who are highly emotionally intelligent and other part who are average and low emotional intelligence. There is a test to diagnose this. So apparently the result was that people with high emotional intelligence are less traumatized and are preventive on such traumatic experience. So just I want to add up this, it's highly important as a preventive technique, if you want to say, to have a highly emotional intelligence in us. So
emotional intelligence is skill. Can someone work on it? It's acquired.
Thank you for asking, because lots of people ask, are we born emotionally intelligent or it's a skill that we can take? No, actually it's something that we can learn. But emotional intelligence, I want to emphasize what Fatima said, it's not about being happy all the time or being fine all the time. It's about knowing how to deal with the emotion, with my emotion, and putting the right emotion in the right place. This is to be right emotionally intelligent. Because one of the questions that I'm asked usually is it I'm not emotionally intelligent because I get angry, I get sad. So it's not the case. We are human beings. We are the 7 basic emotions. Anger is one of them. Happiness is one of them, but sadness is part of them. Anger is part of them. So yes, this is to put the right emotion in the right place. And the more we have emotional intelligence, the more we are into our work engagement, the more we are having our something that we are protecting ourselves against any.
It's like a coping mechanism.
It's a coping mechanism. Exactly. Yes.
So, what could be, if you want to define coping mechanism and emotional intelligence? Would you like to run me like this?
Sure. Coping mechanism is ways people act or behave to deal with certain thing that's happening. And you have healthy coping mechanisms and you have unhealthy coping mechanisms. So for example, somebody might be dealing with excessive stress by drinking or smoking too much. And that's the coping mechanism that's not healthy, or it gets the person into more problems, and then they start seeking solutions for that coping mechanism without going and figuring out what's actually happened with them. So healthy coping mechanism could be actually going to a therapist, finding if they need proper medication, maybe meditation like you were doing in the morning. So different things, but before just trying, like most people want to stop smoking or want to lose weight. It's like they're telling themselves that their own coping mechanism, they should remove it in order to feel better. But by actually going and seeking the proper help, they can find the proper solution, and that coping mechanism will not be as needed as when they are under severe stress or anxiety or going through something.
You all mentioned the risk of self-diagnosis, whether under like a disorder, I have a depressive disorder, an anxiety disorder, or just the general use of words. Can you explain more about the harm of?
Sometimes diagnosis is not just by diagnosing psychiatric issues. Sometimes people say, I have blocked chakras, or they might say I have limiting beliefs, which are alternative diagnoses that came because of coaching and these alternative stuff. So before giving an identity to ourselves or saying that this is something, check actual people who are professionals in this so they can give proper support so that they can deal with the problem in the way that fits the structure. The presence of several kinds of therapies, alternative therapies, is to fit different structures of problems rather than just one size fits all, like one specific thing that works for everybody.
I think this is also a problem in social media because of social media. So now people are diagnosing themselves like, my energy, I have a negative energy. The terms they are using, my chakras are not fine, adding up to your chakras. I have a limiting belief that preventing me from doing this and this. So these big words, please be careful where to use them and to who you listen. And if you hear unprofessional people, they just know how to talk. They read books, and this is only what they are presenting. So please make sure to listen to the right person and go to the right person. Not every person that have lots of likes and followers is the right person. So I wanted to
Thanks for questions. I want to ask how to identify what support is needed and when to seek a psychologist, a therapist, a coach, or a counselor.
Okay, I wanted actually to add, and then I'll get back to the question, if that's okay. So we talked a lot about not self-diagnosing, and sometimes we're under the impression that a diagnosis is harmful or scary. And a lot of I use the words client and patient interchangeably. Okay, so some of the patients or clients that come to my clinic or that come for therapy, some of them are scared of receiving a diagnosis because a diagnosis entails a change in what we believe about ourselves. But other people are very enthusiastic, let's say, and they want a diagnosis. Tell me, am I depressed? Am I anxious? What's happening? Because a diagnosis is actually something very important and very useful. It will help us understand what we're going through. It will help us put words to what we are experiencing. And why not to self-diagnose, or why to have a diagnosis from a professional? Because when someone comes to me in the clinic, I will explain their diagnosis. I will try to understand it with them and to understand how it applies to them in particular. So let's say I have depression and Fatima has depression. I will not be living the depression in the same way as she is. And that is also very important to understand. And it's also important to explain what to expect from this diagnosis. So when a patient comes in, also to tell them there are solutions. Even if this is chronic, you can learn how to deal with it. And we go back to the idea that we're not going to make it disappear, we're going to learn how to manage it.
And as you were mentioning earlier, there's a positive aspect to stress or anxiety. It's not only negative, but we tend to perceive it as negative, and we tend to perceive disorders or the diagnosis as a label.
Yes, exactly. Which is also, it's also like a risk of the self-diagnosis because we're gonna limit ourselves.
Yes. So it's just about the part of the label, it doesn't only have to do with self-diagnosis. So sometimes you see someone, they do have the diagnosis from the professional, and they identify themselves as, I am bipolar. No. You are not bipolar as much as someone who has diabetes is not diabetes. You won't hear someone saying, I am diabetes, or I am cancer. You have, and this is where Angela said, I have bipolar. So even when you do have a diagnosis from a professional, this diagnosis is not you. And it's important to know that. It's important to know the language that we are using in our day-to-day basis, because this language leaves quite a big effect on us. And this is going back to what Marwa and Roni was pointing out, is the words we use and the words sometimes that we hear, a lot of generalizations, a lot of judgments about oneself and about the world and about relationships. كل العالم ما بتسوى الدنيا هي ما بتسوى so on and so forth. So just taking a step and realizing how is fusing with this idea, how is treating this thought as the actual reality helping you on a day-to-day basis.
The trend is ADHD.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
the solution to everything that you can do.
I think this answers your question, what is the difference between psychologist and coach. So part of the diagnosis is the job of a psychologist. So coaches, our psychiatrist, of course. So coaches, it's not their job.
Do you want to tell us a bit more about coaches?
And I will tell a part, and Roni as well as a coach will tell also. I think a coach is only bringing, the job of a coach is to bring the resources within you. Every and each one of us have resources way more than you think we have. So the job of the coach is to guide you with the resources you have, or to remind you that you still have resources. مثل مثلا بيجي أنا ما بقدر ما أنا ما فيني. Okay, so let us do now a small exercise to show you something. I want you to put your hands up as much as you can, please. Can you put it more? بعد شوي أكثر. Can you do it more? Thank you. The main is something I asked you first in the beginning, that put your hand up as much as you can. And asking you to do this more and more, you were able to do it. And this is the job of the coach, to show you that you can still do it. There are resources there to guide you, not from a personal point of view of the coach. This is what suits you, and this is, I can help you with the way reaching your goal, and not the coach's goal. I would like to try that also.
One of the things that I do in my work to filter if this is something I can work with or not is dividing the kinds of problems into three kinds of problems. And the first one is support and care, which is somebody who seeks to talk. Maybe they pass through the grief process, they lost their job, they pass through a breakup. So this is more towards talk therapy and counseling, so they need to express what's going on. Another kind, or another filter is training. So somebody might come and say, whenever I stand in front of people, I don't know how to talk. So that's a training issue. No matter how much therapy they might get or how much somebody might listen to them as counseling, they need skills in order to change. Whereas there are some people that might come and say, when I was 15, this or that happened to me, and I'm not being able to go over that, get over that. My life ended that day and everything changed. So that's more of a therapy and change work thing, where if it's something I can do, I help them or I refer them to the proper therapist or change worker that can help them. So 3 different examples of the same issue. Somebody might say, I don't like dogs. And their friends are trying to convince them that to just get along with dogs. They just want somebody to understand that they just don't like dogs. That's a support and care issue. Somebody else might come and say, when I was 12, I was bitten by a dog and I'm very afraid of that, I need to deal with it, I need proper therapy. And somebody might, I want to approach dogs, but what happens if they jump on me? So they need to train or they need to learn how to deal with the dog in a different way. These are my distinctions.
I want to add up something, please, because you have lots of life coaches now coming and popping up. So, trending, yes. So, be sure the certificate, is he certified, the number of hours he did he do benchmarking, how was he trained to be a life coach? So not anyone who studied for 3 days or 1 week, he is a coach and he's a certified coach. We are dealing with people, we are dealing with the mind maps of people. So, and your map and your mind are so special, so don't let anyone to trace it out for you. Okay, so please, just I want to add this.
Yeah, thank you. This is a very information. Okay, I want to bring more the topic to the Lebanese context. So, since 2018, we've been facing
1943.
Let's only talk about the recent. That's not enough. More than enough. Economic crisis, political turmoil, uprise, protest, you want to call it Dawla or not, independently from the political opinions of each. COVID-19, Beirut blast, cholera now, unemployment. The crime rate has risen now, the huge economic crisis. We're also seeing new phenomena like homelessness, people eating from the garbage. We didn't used to witness this in Lebanon. I don't know, Fatima can correct me, I don't know if the suicide rate also has risen or not. So there is a mosaic of stressors and issues, and a lot of them, or most of them, are out of our control. How do we deal with continuous stressors? How do we deal with these events that are outside our control? In a different topic, in terms of stress, anxiety, trauma, work.
The main thing is to accept what's going on. So this is the issue, this is what you're going through, and you have to accept. Not to accept to a certain stage that, okay, it's fine, we do nothing about it, but we cannot change unless we accept that this is happening and we don't know when will it finish. So we cannot stay in our comfort zone, sitting in this circle that I'm not accepting, I'm denying the issue that this is happening. This is what I wanted to start with, and we can.
Thank you, Marwa. Acceptance is quite a huge word.
Yeah.
I prefer acknowledgement.
More specific.
Yeah, ما كتير بدي يمكن أعلى على المصطلح. So Yumna, it took you like 5 minutes to list the things that have been happening since 2018 till now. And I guess that comes with a lot of feelings of helplessness and hopelessness for a lot of people, especially young people. So unemployment أو إذا employment على المعاش اللبناني تطلع حق البنزينات يمكن تطلع حق أكلاتي so on and so forth. So if we, I'm very big on acceptances. If we just lay acceptance there, a lot of people might come and say, view this as invalidating what they're going through and like إنه ما في شيء عام. This is often heard ما في شيء عام. And يمكن for a big part of it, and in some aspects, truly يمكن الواحد ما في شيء عامله, and this is where the importance of acceptance comes. This just to say, when I say acceptance, it doesn't mean surrender, A. B, it doesn't mean I'm liking the situation. It's neither one of those two things. When I say acceptance, it's acknowledging what I can and what I can't do about the current situation. If there is a situation that I am in whereby, for the time being, let's say I'm living in a house whereby عم ننام 4 بذات الغرفة, I don't have any access to privacy, I'm unemployed, so I'm not being able to change the house or so. So يمكن بالوقت الحالي ما قادر أغير الظروف اللي أنا فيها حاليا بالليل. So accepting rather than every day waking up feeling, and it's okay, we can't control our emotions, right? I might feel resentment, I might feel frustrated, I might feel angry about my current situation, and here's where I identify my emotions and allow them to be there. But then the step after that comes is, what is something that I can do about it? What is the very smallest step that might not change the whole situation, but that might allow me to live life like I would like to live? So I'm unemployed right now, what can I do? Just for today, can I work on my CV? Can I reach out to people? Can I start at a job that is not quote unquote my level and move on from there? And we don't determine, neither psychologists nor life coaches determine what are our options. But what's the smallest thing just for today? Instead of editing my CV, Yumna, can I edit one section of my CV for today? You know? Can I send out one email? Whatever it is, like I just took an example here. And interestingly, we had a lecture recently with one of the very prominent therapists in the US, and it was about this. And really, sometimes it just comes down to after acknowledging these emotions, after telling myself, what is my mind throwing at me right now? Right? What is this machine thoughts? الماشين اللي بتدلع وتشتغل وتكب افكار ولا افكار ولا افكار. What is it throwing at me right now? Okay, my mind is telling me that I'm a failure. My mind is telling me انه ما لي عازة. My mind is telling me انه ما في شيء حيتغير. Thank you, not very helpful. And what can I do now?
Thank you, Fatima. That's actually very, I couldn't have put it more nicely. It's very specific and very helpful. Why it works, what Fatima said, start with the tiniest little thing. Like, she gave the example of the CV. Let's take another example. It's too difficult to get out of bed. Or it's too difficult to take a shower, let's say. So let's narrow it down to the smallest step. So what do you think is the first step to do here? To get out of bed, let's say. Open my eyes. Okay, yes, very simply. Like narrow it down to that tiniest littlest thing. And once I do that, once let's say I open my eyes, I'm gonna get that feeling of satisfaction and that rush of dopamine, and when I achieved something, even something that may seem so trivial right now, as we're saying, okay, I can open my eyes through like that. But when we do it, it actually has a lot of impact. It's gonna keep the momentum moving. So after I open my eyes, I can, let's say, remove the bed sheets, then I can sit upright, then. So instead of thinking, if بدي أقوم وأنزل على الشمال, how am I going to manage to do all of it? Or I need to get up and work on my CV. Before even getting there, let me just, let's say, open my eyes. I really like that.
So chunk it.
Chunk it to the tiniest, littlest bit possible.
Grateful for every point.
I would like to add something.
There is certain people that are happy with what they are, even if it's something bad for them. Because some people at a certain stage, they like to live the victim. Some people, they nag about the apparent issue, but deep inside, there's something that they are gaining. And this Roni can add up to this about the secondary gain. So نحن بنقول إنه أنا ماني مبسوطة باللي أنا فيه, but deep inside, there's something I'm happy, I'm resting. ما عم بعمل شيء مخليني يمكن في أسبوع. So there is a secondary gain in every bad act happening. So be careful to know what is this gain that our body is taking from this act that we are not happy about.
Can you give us an example?
يعني هعطيك example مثل مثلا إذا بتيجي لعندي let's say a lady بتقلي إنه she is living a relationship, a very bad relationship. زوجها بيضربها, she's not a healthy relationship. طب أنا بقول لك ليه باقي؟ لا ما أنا ما فيني أشي لايف, ما أنا ما فيني وما بقدر والمجتمع و excuses. بس هو في deep inside she's not able to go لأنه هي ما بتعرف تعيش مع غير زوجها. هي ما بتعرف to cope with كل شيء stressors حيصيروا من بعد هيدي الستep. So sometimes what preventing us from taking the right action is this thing deep inside us هي اللي ما بتخلينا نوصل اللي ما بدنا نوصله. مثل employment إذا بدنا نحط employment. أنا I can't, ما أنا خاصة هيك و everything needs واسطة and بيكون في deep inside there is a target position I'm targeting and I don't want play because I have ego inside me that says this is what I deserve and I'm not ready إنه أنزل تحت هيدا.
Is that the comfort zone? Or part of
it is a comfort zone, but part of it is yes this ego and part of it إذا بدي أرجع أنا دايما برجع للchildhood and psychologists أكيد agree on what we say. Part of it, the parents that say always to their children, حبيبي شو ذكي, حبيبي أنت تستاهل هيك, أنت كذا, أنت كذا. These affirmations are great for our children, but not to an extent يخلينا إنه this is only what I deserve.
Not to develop a sense of entitlement.
Yes, exactly. Would you like to add up about that?
Sometimes secondary gain is a coping mechanism that people have. So it's the only way they know how to deal with something that's happening. It doesn't have to be related to something internal that they're gaining, but actually this is the only way they can stay sane in real life. So with like proper help and proper support, they can start changing that. And with regards to the comfort zone, why is the comfort zone always something bad? Like some people, they work for 25 years to have a certain job, to gain a certain amount of money, and they're comfortable there. That's not always bad. What I think is being labeled as a comfort zone is when people are in uncomfortable situations, but they are not doing any step to change because they're fearing the unknown. That kind of comfort zone I would agree with, but not all comfort zones are bad.
But are all comfort zones comfortable? And can the comfort zone become uncomfortable, but we're used to this discomfort and we'd rather deal with the discomfort we know rather than the discomfort we don't know, the unknown, and the anxiety that the unknown brings.
That isn't comfortable. The consequences are
It's
uncomfortable.
habituation, we're used to it.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. These definitions, like I was very high on positivity from when I started in 2011 to 2016. Then I was like, why should I be positive about everything? Positivity is sometimes gaslighting myself to feel better. So it's more of understanding the emotions, as the ladies mentioned. Like, I'm feeling anxious right now because I don't have the proper steps to do something in my life. I'm feeling angry because something or someone violated my safety. The other day I was driving the road and somebody passed a red light. So I honked, just a natural reaction. He stopped. So I got next to him and he's like, why did you honk? Like you passed the red light. He's like, but there's no mafi download. I go, I'm sorry. So to deal with these things, it's life is continuously changing every day for us, and it's, as they mentioned, taking one step at a time, one small thing at a time, just to be able to manage the life that we're living.
I'd like to go back to what Marwa and Roni were saying about the thoughts, the story we tell ourselves. So there's a guy called Marcus Aurelius. He's actually part of Stoic philosophers. He's a very prominent figure there, mahafu technicalities, but he has very nice ideas. And actually, Stoicism is where cognitive behavioral therapy comes from. And he says our life is where our thoughts make it. I don't want to use that to invalidate things that are difficult that we may experience, but yes, our thoughts highly affect how we feel and how we react, because right now we're all living this panel. The situation is the same for all of us, but each person is perceiving it in a certain way and thinking certain thoughts, which changes how we are feeling, each of us right now in this situation. And that applies to any other stressor, any situation we can be living. And so, other than, for example, doing the small steps that we can do, we call it behavioral activation, we can also do something in therapy called cognitive restructuring. Very fancy words. What it means is we try to identify our thoughts, just like you did with the mindfulness exercise. Notice what thoughts are coming. In mindfulness, we don't change the thought, we just observe it. With cognitive restructuring, we start to identify which thought is helpful, which thought is not helpful. We don't say good or bad because we don't want to judge ourselves. These are thoughts and we all have thoughts. But we are trying to see what thought is helping me move forward or feel feelings that will help me go forward, and what thoughts are maybe holding me back. And then we try to see if these thoughts are really reflecting the reality or if they are distorted. For example, I can go to class one morning and my friend usually says hello with a smile and be like, hey. And then I think she's mad at me. Is that thought realistic? What are other possibilities? Okay, maybe she is mad at me, but maybe she had a bad night, maybe she did not sleep well, maybe she's upset from something else. And so instead of creating a scenario for myself where she's mad at me, I'm worthless, I'm no good, I change the scenario. And I can go and verify if that thought is true, which is a very big part of what we do in CBT. And it's something that you learn so that you can do by yourself, because the end goal of any therapy or coaching is eventually to be able to manage on your own, to be independent in dealing with whatever stressor you may face.
Just to take a step back and restate what is usually always stated and perceived as a bit boring, but I will take this step back and always it's a good reminder to take care of three things. Number one, you're sleeping, you're eating, and perhaps being just a bit physically active. We sometimes get caught up in every day-to-day life that we just have this very basic structure of just having the amount of sleep that we need and eating our meals regularly and integrating some sort of physical activity. And by physical activity, I don't mean going to the gym 3 times a week, 1 hour at a time. Any type of physical activity, starting from dancing in front of a mirror until whatever you see. But just to highlight these aspects is being very important, especially in times where there's just a lot of stressful events occurring, or even for individuals who have been through a traumatic experience, regaining some sort of structure in everyday life is very important.
So, in the brain there are different functions. There's a function that's more linguistic and more logical, and there's a function that's more emotional. And sometimes when these two different distinct parts of our brain are trying to communicate with themselves, they don't know how to communicate. So has anybody ever said, I want to say something but I can't, it's like I have a tire on my chest, or somebody that has lots of worries, they say it's like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. Okay, I'm sorry. So when we express these things, it's a part of our brain that's more imagistic or more metaphorical, trying to experience something. One additional exercise you can do is to get a piece of paper and draw what you're experiencing, like what am I feeling, what is it like? And in that way, you're explaining to the logical part of your brain what the non-logical part of the brain is trying to express in a certain way. So in addition to cognitively thinking about it, that's another way.
The tips that you've just shared with us rely on the person themselves. But let's say if the person is feeling down, is feeling like a failure, incapable, how can they ask for support with their immediate surrounding before reaching the coach or the therapist or the psychiatrist? Also, how to convince parents, let's say if they're underage or under the roof of their parents, how to convince parents to that they need external help. How do they approach their immediate surroundings and
before the shit
yeah, the shit حالك is a big part of it, actually. Sums up a lot of things. And maybe here we can delve just very quickly in how we can support someone who is experiencing mental health difficulties. Yمكن one of the main barriers to seeking out help for mental health difficulties is the stigma اللي محطوطة على الصحة النفسية، اللي بتفسر الصحة النفسية بكلمة مجنون أو بكلمة attention seeking ما إلى هنالك manipulation and so on. So كمان كل حدا فينا we were having a discussion قبل شوي على التليفون إنه مش كل حدا عنده interest بmental health المفروض يفوتوا يعمل clinical psychology. Mental health is an integral part of each and every one of our lives, whether we acknowledge it or not. But we can start from there. We can start with normalizing mental health. And we can start with what Angela بديت الدسكشن في اليوم اللي هي الصحة النفسية ما فينا نختصرها باضطراب نفسي، الصحة النفسية تتعدى ذلك يعني حتى إذا بدنا نطلع بال WHO's definition of mental health it also involves غير إنه a person is while on an emotional state, on a cognitive state, it also involves a person to be functional in their day-to-day life. لما بنتقل هون بشكل سريع لأنا كيف في support someone passing through mental health difficulties هو شيلة لهيك شد حالك من بالك. لما يجي حدا يكون عم يعبر لي عن صعوبات عم يقطع فيها بطبيعتنا يمكن العربية ونقول بس اللبنانية بس حتى العربية دغري بننط صوب إنه to look for solutions أو to give advice أو أنا قاطع بذات الشيء تاعها. Which can be quite invalidating للشخص. في عالم عم بتموت من الجوع، right? ما هو الشخص بذاته عارف في عالم عم بتموت من الجوع، ما بيعازي يطلع على قلبه يذكره بالموضوع، بس هو بالرغم من هيك، بالرغم من إنه على دراية بالهيدا بعده عم يضايق من اللي عم يقطع فيه. فهون أنا دوري لأي حدا whether someone from the family, a friend يكون عم نخلق هيدي النصيحة الآمنة لهود الأشخاص يكونوا عم يحكوا ويعبروا. لما أقول I'm validating what they're going through, so instead of شد حالك it's you know what معك حق اللي عم تقطع فيه منه هي. You have every right to feel whatever you're feeling. I can see that you're feeling sad, you're feeling angry, whatever it is. I can imagine إنه هيدا الشيء قد إيه عم يخلي تقيل عليك. ليه بيستعملهم لهول المصطلحات لحتى الشخص ما حسسه إنه ما له الحق to pass what they're passing through. وكمان it helps the person express more. والشخص بيكون بمرحلة بحاجة إنه يكون عم يحكي، فأنا ما بدي صده بعبارات مثل معك حق بس انه الحمد لله في كثير اشياء منيحه عم تقطع بحياتك، لك اهلتك قد ايه سبورتيف او كذا، هيدا مثل بيقطع الحديث بينه وبين الشخص. فانا بدي اكون اخلق هالمساحه الشخص يكون عم يعبر عن حاله and to feel heard and to feel supported. And sometimes it's helpful to ask the question of how can I support you right now? It's something I often use with friends لما يكونوا عم approaching me wanting to talk to me about something. The first question I would ask, do you want to talk? Or do you want advice? Or do you want us to think out loud of possible solutions together? ويمكن دايما بطبيعة الحال لما الشخص يعبر عن اللي عم يقطع فيه مثل بدكم تعتبروا مثل هالبالون اللي منفوخ ومعبى وما قادر، بهيدا الحال الشخص ما قادر يفكر بسولوشنز. فلما يكون عم يعبر هالبالون مثل بنفس بتلاقوه اصلا الشخص باخر الحديث بلش يطلع ب their own solutions. So I think this is very quickly about how can I be supportive for someone. ولما أنا ألاقي حدا عم يقطع بهذا الشيء كمان it might be very important to suggest to them to seek help, to seek professional help, to process whatever they are going through. حكينا عن الacceptance، حكينا إنه يمكن كأول خطوة الشخص it's very important to be aware of their thoughts, to be aware of their emotions, to be able to identify شو هو الشعور اللي أنا عم حس فيه هلا. Where am I feeling it in my body? Perhaps even what shape is it taking in front of me, inside of me, before, and then I can reach the step of what can I do right now. But sometimes it's not as easy said as done. الحكي سهل.
It's like be patient with yourself.
It's الحكي سهل. Sometimes I really need a professional يكون معي أنا وعم climbing this mountain of mine. Sometimes it's needing a professional to help me navigate really how can I deal with my emotions, how can I deal with my thoughts, and how can I take this next step. Especially لما يكون وصلنا لمرحلة of reaching a mental disorder. آخر شيء I know طولت بس very briefly لأنه حكينا عن اللايف كوتش، يمكن شوي حكينا عن السايكولوجي، بس كمان not to rule out psychiatry. Some mental disorders need medications. لما نحكي bipolar disorder for example، or لما نحكي schizophrenia, the biological underpinnings is the main thing. So individuals with bipolar disorder, therapy can be very helpful in order to learn how to be aware of a person's mood dysregulation, aware of the symptoms, how to move forward with life. But we can't rule out medications أبداً. التريتمنت الأساسية هي بتكون عبر الدواء. Schizophrenia التريتمنت الأساسية هي عبر الدواء. حتى with depression, sometimes with depression therapy alone is enough أو GAD أو OCD. But sometimes a person بيكون واصل لمرحلة the severity of their illness does not permit them to be able to engage in therapy أصلاً. So medications as a first step is very important.
Like a stabilizer.
100%. ولا الدواء ما بيسبب إدمان لا سيما لما يكون تحت وصف وعناية الطبيب. يعني الأدوية اللي بتسبب إدمان هي قليلة اللي هي الإكساناكس، الإكسوتامين، غيره، وهودي أصلاً قل ما يوصفوا. الأدوية الأساسية اللي هي فعلياً العلاج مثل الأنتي ديبريسنتس، المود ستابلايزرز، الأنتي سايكوتكس، هودي أدوية لا تسبب إدمان مثل ما هو متعارف عليه. So I will leave it at that.
Angela, you mentioned a lot of your clients or a lot of
You get this question, how can I convince my parents to seek support? Or how can I convince my partner or whatever? How do you answer that? What's your take?
So to convince another person or how to have them support me if I'm alone.
How to convince and support?
Okay, it can be very difficult to convince someone to go to therapy, and we basically cannot force someone to do something for their own good. You can give suggestions, you can provide support, like Fatima was discussing, but eventually I think it's important to I'm going to highlight your own limits. limits. If you're someone who is trying to help someone, be very aware of your own limits. If you are ready to help at this moment, if you have the capacity to even ask this question, how can I support? Maybe you need support in this moment, and so you're going to be invalidating to the other person. So you can express that. And when we get to the idea of boundaries, which also sometimes are perceived as something negative, as a rupture, and I'm putting a wall, a barrier between me and the other person, but it's the opposite. A boundary is a bridge between me and the other person, the person in front of me. It shows that I care enough and that I respect them enough to tell them what I need from this interaction right now. And boundaries can change. They don't have to be rigid. إنه خلاص هيدي هي هيك أو كتير loose. إنه ما في boundaries أبدا, and I end up feeling overwhelmed or tired or resenting. So, as a helper, know your limits. And know your limits also in that you cannot force someone to change. So you can suggest to your partner or your friends or your parents or your siblings that therapy can help, but eventually they have to do their own research and they have to take that step. La demande,
The request, the agency.
yeah, the need or the request has to come from them, because any change from outside is not going to be long lasting. The change has to come from inside. And for the other way around, so if let's say I want to go to therapy but I cannot afford it, and another barrier, to be realistic, is not just the stigma, it's the costs. Therapy is expensive. So if you are a university student, actually you can check in your university. Usually there is a counseling center. Sadly, there is a long waiting list, and you will have maybe a limited number of sessions, but it can be enough to get you on your feet again. Otherwise, there are different NGOs or centers that are offering as well free mental health. Come in on the same issue. You have to wait, you have a limited number of sessions, but it's worth checking out if you really need help. And you can try to, some therapists, they have like student crisis, or you can give and take with your therapist. You can check different psychologists, see how much they take, and settle on one that has a price range that's affordable. If your parents cannot pay for you, or if your job doesn't allow that much, you can go once a month, once every 2 weeks. You don't have to go every week or twice a week. So you can find a way to get that support and adjust it to meet your needs and your capacity. And not to be harsh, but if your surrounding, whether it's your family or your friends, cannot support you in your decision to go to therapy, then that is not necessarily something you have to share with them. This is your decision and your decision only. It doesn't need approval from anyone. It just needs your own approval. This is something you are doing for you. And if you are going to get criticized for it, it's okay to not talk about it to specific people. So this is where you know your environment better. You know this is someone I can trust and share my mental health struggles with. And these are people who are going to تمشي حالك or لشو أو تضيع وقت or any other hurtful words. So that's it.
One last thing from me. You know the statement when we were young, when we had a plate, and our parents used to tell us, finish your plate, there are kids in Africa who don't eat. One day I asked somebody from Africa, so what do your parents tell you? They tell them there are children in China who don't have enough to eat. So then I asked a friend from China, he said they tell them children in India don't have enough to eat. So sometimes it's the environment, it's the rules that we grew up with. Some parents or some family members won't understand. Take care of yourself by finding the right support rather than first seeking acceptance externally, and then hopefully they will catch on and be supported when they see you improving and find your own solution.
I would like to add something that happens in my clinic. I have a clinic, I'm a dietitian as well. So one of the things that my patients feel at ease, they tell me أنا كثير مبسوط هلا إذا حدا شافني جاي عند dietitian مش جاي عند coach. So we still have this mentality. I'm sorry to say that, but we still have this mentality. أو إذا حدا شافنا عندي, please tell them I come for nutrition and not for coaching. So حتى في patients اللي بيجوا حجيب لك ابني قولي له إنه أنت حتشوفي له وزنه بس بدي إياكي تشوفي له هيدا الإشو. I want to make one thing clear, and I'm sure they agree with me. ما بنشتغل على حدا if he doesn't want. He must be knowing what he is doing. It's not ethical. اجي انا اقرر انا على راس انا بدي اشتغل هيك. حتى لو something we see it's wrong, all what we can do as coaches at least, and I'm sure psychology goes in the same line. We just tell the patient, if you stay the way you are, this can happen, and if you change, this can happen, and you choose. It's all you. أنت بتختار. إذا خيارك أنت.
So consent is very important, even for underage, under 18.
Yes, 100%.
Consent inside the session, because sometimes people come for a certain topic, and another topic gets directed to. If you don't have consent to work on that,
I just wanted to add a very quick side note مثل على الهامش ما نكون بس عم شو اسمه throwing the arrow at parents. بطبيعة الحال الأهل الستيغما اللي عندهم على الصحة النفسية. Of course.
Some people in the audience.
A lot of the parents, yes, the stigma on mental health and mental disorders and seeking treatment for many of the parents and the older generation is quite more intense. And finding the support system that a person needs does not necessarily equate that a person cut ties with their parents. And I'll just put this as a side note because as a process of healing is also understanding where our parents are coming from. And if our parents have been living 50 years of their lives where their parents and their grandparents and their grandparents have fed them that عيب صحة نفسية وشد حالك, I can't come to expect from a parent to be a mental health advocate. That's not to invalidate any experiences that youth might go through from their parents, and sometimes it gets to a situation where it's really harmful. So this isn't to say you should cut ties with your parents, and this isn't to say you shouldn't. But just being able to realize where you are now, will seeking treatment be helpful for me? And asking oneself the question, what would be more helpful? Informing them and trying to educate them, or just having them remain in the dark for a long period about that. And I take just an example of myself, which doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. It took my mom like 4 or 5 years to get her head around mental health and what I do and why I do it and so on, and شو بدك بهالشغلة. But she got there. It's not for me, but somehow she got there. And again, it doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, but education is.
Well, we're happy you had a success story.
Education to parents is also very important. لا سيما لما يكون حدا underage. If someone is underage, if it's a child, and you need the consent of parents for them to seek treatment. And though that might take effort in a while, but trying to بس إنه تجيهم من مطرح ما هن.
To speak their language.
To speak their language. تجيهم من مطرح هن. And sometimes, if you're a grown-up and you have your sister or you have a family member who you know might benefit from treatment, and your parents مأكسين عن الموضوع and they're not going to listen to you, perhaps involving someone from their age, an adult that understands and speaks their language and they trust, might be also helpful.
Thank you everyone. It's now to end our discussion panel. We are so honored to have you with us.
Just a quick take-home message when it comes to stress and employment, therapy, trauma, coping mechanism. Like, is there one quick take-home message
You want to share before we open the floor for the questions?
One thing could be just learn the different kinds of help and support that's present out there, and maybe check several people before you commit, because you need to be comfortable with the kind of therapy and kind of change that you're working with. That's a good start. And just baby steps, one step at a time.
I would say that God gave us a gift that is life, and this gift deserves to be pampered, and we take care of it. So take care of your body, of your soul, because it's a combination. Follow always your passion. There is always a way to start. It's not always the end. Every day is a new start. So مش إنه خلاص صارت هيك I take it. No, there is always a new hope, a new day. There is always something that's coming up. Maybe I didn't notice it yesterday. Maybe today, some of the panelists here popped up an idea in one of your minds, and you'll take it from there.
First of all, thank you everyone for your attention. I think I'll sum it up with 2 sentences. Firstly, and most importantly, you are not alone, and whatever you think you are going through, someone else is also going through the same thing, and what you're going through matters. So go out, seek help, talk about it. It will turn out better than you expect. Another idea, I don't know if any of you know the Serenity Prayer. So it says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I think that sums up what we were talking about today.
I think we talked quite a bit about mental health today, just as it is important to destigmatize the topic of mental health, it's as important to destigmatize talking about suicide as well, and having suicidal thoughts, which we know comes hand in hand with mental health. So I think I would just sum up in Roni, there are resources you can, please, I know it can be very difficult to open up, but find the people that you know can be safe for you. Speak up, open up. I would just very briefly mention that there's always the Lifeline 1564, and Raises Lifeline that is available 24/7 for both mental and for both emotional support, or so whether the person is passing through emotional distress, whether or not they are experiencing suicidal ideations as well. So you can always reach out to the Lifeline for yourselves, or if there's someone that you know is struggling and you're not being able to know how to help them, come in, the operators and the volunteers can help you guide you through that.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Actually, yes. It's fine.
For the basic time.
Okay. So basically, you said like basically therapy. You said like the University of Liverpool. You said about NGOs. What is it? Okay. Do you have their names, their numbers, so we can write them down?
Okay, I can mention the one that I was working with. It's called Restart Center. They have an office in Finishupig and in Tripoli. And if it's too far away for anyone to get there, they also, the specialists also provide remote sessions, online sessions when necessary. We didn't talk about online sessions much, but yes, they are effective. It really depends, because when we are in the clinic, we have a certain setting. Whether as a psychiatrist, therapist, coach, there's a certain setting to be respected, and so it might be a bit trickier to guarantee that setting in an online session. One is the role of the professional you're working with to guarantee that setting, to make sure you're getting the best experience from remote sessions. And if for some reason or another you find that these sessions are not working for you remotely, you can discuss it with your therapist. And if they find that maybe you might benefit more from face-to-face, they can also share that with you. So it's an open floor for communication. Other NGOs,
You can
Embrace IMC.
embrace our learning sessions.
you can call So Embrace Lifeline has a referral list according to locations, and includes all NGOs in different areas. You can always call and try to get they ask you about where do you live, so give you something near to you, they give you the name of the NGO and the contact information.
And I can share with JCI the list. I can share with JCI the list. Maybe they can share with the attendees. Any other question?
So how do we know what type of therapy to seek? Like maybe we can't afford to go from one doctor to another or one coach. What's the how can I evaluate what and then see this? Like I have it easy because I have my sister, but in case I don't have someone who practices psychology.
Okay. So, Jessica, are you asking what type of therapy? Because there are different therapies, like cognitive, psychoanalysis, but not psychoanalysis. Please, who would like to answer?
First, the rule number one is to like the therapist. I believe this. To read about the therapist, to like the person, to feel you are relaxed talking to this therapist. If you are lucky and you went to a coach and not to a psychologist, and this coach has ethics, he will be able to see that you need a psychologist and not a coach. Okay, so this is ethically speaking. Usually, it doesn't happen vice versa again. Usually, rare cases, psychologists refer to coaches. It does, what did it say? Okay, so actually, coaches refer to psychologists when they know that something they can't deal with. But as a coach, I'm a psychologist and Roni can add up. But as a coach, I say if you need something, just someone to guide you in your goals, goal setting, knowing your resources, helping you in changing certain habits to reach the further goal, not real issue, not anxiety, not depression, not suicide, you can go to a coach. Okay, but else, it's the job of a psychologist. You would like to add up for a coach?
Sure. Knowing that there's something that you want to change or there's something that's going on, that's a great start. So by researching the resources like Lina just mentioned, just starting from there, like there are free resources where you can access, and from there you can just like identify if this is working or not working. Maybe asking around the support system, like have you went to a therapist that benefited you? There are organizations that provide group therapy, which are also helpful. They start as free, like IFRA, I guess, what was just a few years ago. They might not find the solution there, but it's a good place to start. From my journey, when I had mental health issues, I started with therapists, but then I shifted and I started exploring different kinds of therapies. It took me a while, but it's just identifying that there is a challenge to be worked on, and from there it gets easier by just doing the first step.
I just want to say very quickly that it's okay to say that to the therapist, to the coach, to the person you're dealing with, that it's not working. Like there are no retaliation, there shouldn't be any personal revengeful judgment to saying I'm not comfortable with this.
The last thing I'd say is with regards to differentiating. If a person has gotten if a person wants to work on improving their life, gaining certain skills in terms of communication and anger management, or so, maybe a life coach here would be applicable. But if a person has gotten to an extent where they are dysfunctional in more than one aspect in their life, if the person has gotten to a point where they have suicidal thoughts, for example, then here it would be better to seek professional help from either a psychologist or a psychiatrist.
I just wanted to add, because you're asking really have to know what kind of approach might be more beneficial for me. So you don't necessarily have to overthink it. There are so many specialties and subspecialties. It's so confusing, and it would take a lot of time to right now explain what each of them is. But what Marwa said is, as long as you feel comfortable with your therapist, the most important thing is that you feel safe and that you feel you are not judged, you are accepted and you are validated as you are. That is the most important thing, because this relationship in itself is going to be therapeutic, and think of it as you want to get somewhere and you might be taking a car or a boat or a plane. It doesn't matter how you get there. It's just about getting there.
On the last note, because Marwa mentioned asking about the life coach's license or not, so it's the same for a psychologist. So please do ask whether the psychologist has a license. I'm not order, so you can also ask about any psychologist that you I'm not a psychologist.
It's online. It's online, people can check.
Yeah, so please do check if the person that you are seeking help to do have a license to practice. And second thing, you can always come in and read a bit about the different modalities of therapy and read what is the modality that this person is following and does this sync with you or not.
I feel this is something that where I get most questions in general, not from clients but from people around me. So how to find a therapist, what approach I should go for. So other than reading online, I think it's okay also to maybe find, so they are listed. So what you need to know for therapists, actually they have to have at least a master's degree, not bachelor. Then they have to do something called a colloquium, which is like a state exam, so that they get their license to practice. And as of now, they also have to be registered in the Order of Psychologists. So anything less than that, you might doubt the credentials of the person. You can look up online the names, as Fatima was saying, and then you can call the therapist and ask them all these questions. What approach do you use? What does it mean? What can I expect from the session? It's okay to ask and get information. Some therapists even have a preliminary free session. So the first time you go, they don't charge you. You're there just to see how it goes, and you can ask all these questions as well and see if it's a good fit. And then some people charge, some people don't. So maybe you can find people who don't take for the first session and see if you feel comfortable with them to continue.
Free therapy provided.
Thank you. Thank you. We have reached the end of our discussion, and I think you're all free for the coffee break.